Joe Kissell takes control of your passwords. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Kolide at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, if there's one guest that I never seem to have on enough because we get so much out of him in every sense, it's Joe Kissell. Joe, it's great to have you back. Thanks for being here.
Nice to be here as always.
So this time, we usually corral you for one book or another, one new book or one upgrade. This time, we're going to talk about taking control of your passwords, or take control of your passwords.
Yeah. So, it seems like I've been writing about passwords for eons. And this was not my first book about passwords, and it was not my last book about passwords. But anyway, it's up to the 4th edition now. So, and boy, this is a very, very, very long overdue update. And I'm going to say the same thing about the next 3 or 4 books that we talk about in the coming months. I've had a really interesting and complicated couple of years. And a lot of things, like everybody had complications because of COVID and whatnot, but I had the additional complication of moving to another country and, kid with special needs and so forth. So a lot of things just have dragged, and I feel terrible about it. I'm slowly getting, getting to the point where I'm getting almost ready to think about being nearly caught up in a few months. And then of course, Apple announces Sonoma. So I'm like, I got to add another thing to my list. And I have, other new books coming too. So anyway, progress is occurring, and this is the latest example of it, an update to a new addition to a book that should have been out 2 years ago. And I'm sorry, but it turned out to be kind of fortuitous because so much has happened in that time period that I was literally writing about things that were announced that day. And if I had done the update 2 years ago or a year ago or even a month ago, I would have had to update it again. So it's a big topic that is undergoing a lot of change.
And we've talked about this before. It's a topic that you think, passwords. Okay, I need them longer. I need them more complex. I need not to, share them on Post-it notes taped to my computer. But, nothing else really changes. And quite to the contrary, you've educated us that things really do change on a consistent basis, just because of the fact that there's so many bad guys out there that are trying to get to you. And one of the easiest ways, or at least in theory, if you're not taking your advice, is through bad passwords.
Yeah, and I mean, to this day, it's at least a weekly occurrence that I read about some, hack or leak or somehow a bunch of passwords got into the bad guy's hands and chaos ensued. And somebody's phone was hacked, but it wasn't really hacked. What really happened was somebody found out their password, or somebody guessed their password or passcode. So there's a new thing on the horizon which we'll talk about. So there is hope that the majority of our password pain will go away in a finite amount of time, but not yet. And not all of it. So it's still very, very important to practice good password hygiene.
So I'm presuming you're talking about Passkeys as the relief that's on the horizon.
Yeah. So, Apple released support for Passkeys last, whatever it was, August, September, October, with iOS 16, iPadOS 16, and Ventura, and that's nice. It was very nice, And everybody kind of thought, well, this is cool. When I go to one of those like 5 sites that lets me log in with a passkey and I set that up, wow, it's so much easier, to set up and use, and also way more secure than passwords. And on top of that, you don't have to worry about second factor codes or all that stuff anymore. It's just like, go to the site. Oh, can I have your fingerprint or your face scan or whatever it is? Yes, and done. And so that's lovely. It's lovely that Apple put that support in. But first issue is that not very many sites have added support for it yet. Some have that you will encounter on a regular basis, like see, now that I'm put on the spot, I can't even think of them. But like eBay, okay, eBay is an example. That's one that a lot of us have heard of and a lot of us use. So eBay supports passkeys now. Oh, that's cool. And if you go to eBay a lot, then that will be a very nice thing for you. And there are a number of other sort of well-known sites that do, but it hasn't reached anything like a critical mass yet. You can find these directories online of sites that support passkeys, and they are growing slowly, but you're not seeing thousands or even hundreds of entries. You might see like a couple dozen entries. So, so part of what we're waiting for is for more sites to implement this technology. But within the last several months, a bunch of new things have happened with passkeys. So, of course, Microsoft got on the bandwagon, so you can now use passkeys in Windows 10 and 11. Google got on the passkey bandwagon too. So passkeys are supported in Android and in Chrome OS and the Chrome browser. And third-party password managers have been adding passkey support too. Dashlane has them. 1Password has them in beta. Bitwarden will be adding them, I guess, imminently this summer or something, and so forth. So because the tools we use to manage our passwords are starting to get more serious about supporting passkeys, I think that's going to be an inducement for more sites to add support on their end so that we can all use passkeys everywhere, and that will be beautiful. So that is kind of one of the biggest things that has happened in the world of authentication. There's a lot more to say about it, but since they weren't even a thing at all in the previous edition of the book, I devote quite a bit of time to talking about passkeys.
I don't want to go too far down this road, but let me ask you just a couple questions. First of all, my understanding is that in order for passkeys to be utilized on a site, the site has to do some work on their end.
Yes,
so
correct.
So you can't just start using passkeys on MacVoices because my MacVoices site because I haven't done that work.
That's right? Absolutely correct. And in fact, I would love to support passkeys on the Take Control Books website. I would love to, and one day I expect to, but it's not like I can just click a button and there it is. It's not like I can just like download some plugin and activate it and boom, we have passkey support. No. There's a lot of other infrastructure work that I would have to do because the whole design of the site right now is based on this idea of usernames and passwords. And even once I did implement support for passkeys, still, I think for a long time, the vast majority of our customers will rely on their existing usernames and passwords. It won't replace them, it will supplement them as another option. And so I have to redesign the interface of the site to support those two options. I have to do a lot of testing on many different platforms. And there's just a lot of the stuff in our infrastructure for when and how you log in and what happens then that has to be adjusted sometime, in some cases pretty majorly to support passkeys. So I want to do it. I will do it, but it's not like it's one of those things where if I had a free week and nothing else to do, I can make that happen. But my weeks are pretty busy right now. So would you like to have a book on Sonoma, or would you like to have Passkey support? It's that kind of a thing. Uh, so and that's I mean, I have a little website, right? It's not a big elaborate thing, but imagine that you have a gigantic website, you know, tens, hundreds of times bigger, more elaborate than the little Take Control website, with lots of different options and ways to log in and things that those logins imply, and many, many pages that have to be redesigned for a new passkey based UI. If I'm the owner of a business like this, I'm going to say, okay, well, what's this going to cost us in terms of coding and testing and QA and all those kinds of things? And somebody will do some research and say, well, that's going to cost you this many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I would say, okay, that's interesting. And what is going to be the return on that investment? And they're going to say, a, a, a fraction of your customers will be marginally happier. And the person holding the purse will say, that's not such a compelling reason to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, that's what we're looking at, basically. Some sites are going to have an easier time implementing this. For some, it's going to be a lot harder. And for some, it will take many, many, many of their users complaining and griping that they haven't supported it yet for that to happen. So I'll just mention in passing, Apple's operating systems support passkeys, but you can't log into your Apple account in a web browser using a passkey. You can't log into iCloud.com using a passkey. I mean, yet. But Apple's website is ginormous. It's very, very, very complex. So I expect it'll happen eventually, but it hasn't happened yet.
And that takes me to my second question. I know how many times I've done interviews with people at CES, and farther back than that say, oh, we've got passwords beat. No more passwords. This is going to be it. It's going to be optical, optical scanners. It's going to be biometric data, and it never happens. Do you honestly think that we, no matter how long it takes, do you think this realistically is what will take usernames and passwords out of the game?
Yes, with an asterisk. So, in my books on passwords for years and years and years and years, I've been saying, I've been reading these articles and hearing the interviews and reading all the announcements, but exactly what you're saying. Oh, we've got a plan to kill the password. And I'm like, yeah, let's see. And I've been kind of very dismissive of these statements that a lot of companies have made for a long, long time, because whatever their cool approach is or trick is or technology is, it all comes back to, it's not you can't completely erase the existence of passwords unless every single site, app, service that uses passwords adopts your new infrastructure. So if you have some kind of a thing that will let you log in without typing a password, that's great. There are lots of those things. But what they do is they automatically enter your password for you, or they work around that somehow. They use the existing username and password that you must have, because that's all the site knows about to be able to authenticate you. And then they layer something on top of that to make the process of logging in easier. And I don't discount that. Easier is good. But that's sort of all that anyone has been able to offer short of the world's websites employing some new technology. What's different this time is that all the big players are on board, not just Apple, Google, Microsoft, but also, 1Password and many companies in this FIDO alliance. So FIDO is this organization that determines the specifications and standards for various security products, including the little USB or Lightning or NFC, uh, you know, tokens, I guess is the word, that you can use for two-factor authentication. So it's been the case for a long time that, if a site or app wants to add more security, they'll say, yes, type in your username, type in your password, but now, in addition to that, you need to plug in this special key that you have previously, registered with us and click the button, and that's another step in the authentication process that keeps you that much safer. So security keys can be used on their own, or they can be used as an additional form of authentication. And over the years, a lot of sites and services have added support for this mechanism. And the reason they've added support is that they've been pushed to do that by, privacy regulations and governmental things. And, if you want to have this government contract, we need more security, so you have to add this to your site. Or, a requirement of their bank, or a requirement of their insurance underwriter, things like that. So a lot of big businesses have added FIDO support to their stuff. And FIDO is the basis of Passkeys. So if a site has gone that first step of adding support for FIDO authentication, it's a relatively small incremental step to also support Passkeys. So that it has that going for it. So it has the biggest technology names behind it. It has increasing support in consumer level products. People that try it out say, this is great, this is cool, more please. And there is already a certain level of existing infrastructure. So I think of all the ideas I have ever encountered for replacing passwords, and there have been many of them, I think this one has by far the best shot at success. And it also leads to really great security and a really easy user experience. But the asterisk is, it still requires that sites and apps and services do something. Depending on, did somebody build this site from hand? Did they base it on an existing tool such as WordPress or Drupal or something like that? If they, depending on how it was built and how elaborate it is, it may require comparatively little work to add passkey support, or it may be just a gargantuan job. And little mom and pop sites, of which there are a million on the internet, are going to say, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. We have the usernames and passwords. We're just going to stick with those. So I would guess that even if 10 years from now, there's a million sites supporting passkeys, not the dozens that we have now, but millions of sites, there will still be that many millions more that don't. So sadly, although passkeys will make our lives easier and easier as time goes on, I genuinely don't think that within my lifetime, passwords will completely disappear. I would like to think that they would, but realistically, I don't think they will.
MacVoices is supported by Kolide at kolide.com/MacVoices. Clicking on the wrong link can cause you plenty of headaches if it's just you. But if it's your company, the possibility of clicking a wrong link is multiplied by the number of users, right along with the headaches. Your users don't mean to create a problem, but they have other things on their priority list. That's why Kolide works so well for Okta users. You can get your entire fleet to 100% compliance. If a device isn't compliant, and tries to log in, it can't. The user is provided with the information on what needs to be done. If they do it, great. If not, they're blocked. Immediate, helpful device compliance that secures your company. Without Kolide, there's nothing to stop an unsecure device. With Kolide, unsecure devices don't have a chance to cause issues. And this is all built to work seamlessly with Okta. Zero trust architecture and 100% device compliance. That means fewer support tickets and less frustration all around. Just what the doctor ordered. Visit kolide.com/MacVoices to learn more or book a demo. That's Kolide, KOLIDE.com/MacVoices. Kolide.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Kolide for supporting MacVoices. Okay, one last question about passkeys, and then we'll get on to some other stuff.
Cool.
And I'm not asking for a detailed explanation of the mechanics of passkeys, but the fact that 1Password is supporting it, I think you said Dashlane is too. How should we think about passkeys? I mean, right now, I put a username and my password into 1Password, and then when I visit that site, I can do one of two things. Either I can use the one of the Safari extensions and it'll automatically fill, or I can look up my password and hand key it or copy it over. Okay.
Right.
So that leaves me with the impression that I have something that I can use on from not just from my iMac, but also from my MacBook Pro or from my laptop.
Yeah.
I have the same impression from Passkeys that this is going to be something that is unique for me to that website that can be then moved around between devices and I can still access that website. Is that this is where I don't want to mislead anybody, but I'd like to understand it a little better myself.
All right. So you've opened up a can of worms, but it's important and it's interesting. So we'll talk about the worms. I had this professor in grad school who was just like the kindest, most polite person ever. He was so cheerful, and you could tell that it really pained him to tell anybody that they're wrong. He wanted to just always be positive, and he didn't want to say, no, that's a stupid wrong answer. So whenever anybody gave a stupid wrong answer, he would kind of pause for a minute and he would go, that's approximately correct. And so when we heard Dr. Bergen say it's approximately correct, we knew, oh no, it wasn't even in the ballpark. So all right. A passkey is like a marketing term, right? So what these credentials are really multi-device or device-independent FIDO credentials. And that multi-device or device-independent bit is the whole key. So on the surface, that sounds wonderful. So let's say I'm using a Mac, all right? And I go to some site in Safari, and a little thing pops up like, hey, would you like to set up a passkey? And you say, why not? Click the button and use, if your Mac has Touch ID, use that or use whatever. Okay, so great. You have a passkey. Safari saved it for you. It's in your keychain someplace, although weirdly you can't actually see it there. And the next time you go back to that site in Safari on your Mac, it just says, hey, do you want to just like touch your Touch ID thing? And then we'll log you in, and you say, yes, and it's done. So that's nice. And then you go to that same site on your iPhone, your iPad. Hey, that passkey synced between your Apple devices with iCloud keychain, and you get exactly the same experience. It doesn't matter which device you saved that passkey on; they sync across your Apple devices, and you're like, hey, this is great. As long as you stay within the Apple ecosystem and use Safari, that is the experience you have. Now, let's say you are on your Mac, but you're not using Safari, you're using Google Chrome. That's okay. Google Chrome supports passkeys too. And the passkeys that you set up and save in Google Chrome will sync to Google Chrome on all your different devices, all your different operating systems. But if you save something in Google Chrome and then you go to that same site in Safari on the same computer, Safari doesn't know anything about that passkey, because as things stand now, and very much subject to change, but as things stand now, Google keeps things in their universe, and Apple keeps things in their universe, and Microsoft keeps things in their universe. There isn't yet any good way to take a passkey that you've saved in Safari and use that passkey in Chrome, even if it's on the same device. Now, all the tech companies say, we're working on it. Give us 6 months, a year. We're going to have some solutions to this. And in fact, in iOS 17 and Sonoma and so forth, there will be an incremental step in that direction. But this is one of the growing pains things. Okay, so as long as you stay within one ecosystem, you're good. If you try to cross boundaries, then you would literally have to set up a second passkey for that second ecosystem. Okay, well, what about if you use 1Password, Dashlane, Bitwarden? What if you use one of these third-party tools that has, at least almost now or in beta form, passkey support? Doesn't that solve everything? Yes-ish. So, okay, let's go back. I'm on my Mac. Okay, I'm on my Mac. I'm in Safari, and I've got 1Password installed, the latest special beta version of 1Password for Safari. And I go to that site and it says, hey, would you like to set up a passkey? Store that 1Password. Yes, please. Great. So now that's stored in 1Password. That's terrific. If I go to the same site in Chrome on my Mac or in Firefox on Windows PC, or, well, no, Firefox is, well, okay. Firefox is special pain. But anyway, if I go in another browser on another device, could be Apple, could be not. As long as I'm using a beta version of 1Password that supports the passkeys and they've synced, great. I can log in. I can use those credentials in 1Password. It's great. But again, if I already had a passkey that I set up in Safari or a passkey that I set up in Google Chrome, there isn't currently any way to get those passkeys into 1Password. There's no like exporting, importing, sharing, syncing. It can't be done currently. So if your first experience with passkeys was using 1Password, and you use 1Password on every device and every operating system, then you'll have a pretty smooth experience using passkeys. It'll just kind of work everywhere for you. But if you decide one day you want to use one of those passkeys in Safari without 1Password installed, you can't. There's no way to cross those boundaries right now. So that's the kind of the biggest and most painful thing about passkeys as they exist today. Unlike passwords, you can't say, oh, well, my password is QWERTY. So it's in iCloud keychain, but hey, you know what? I want to put that in 1Password, so I'll just type that in. Like, okay, well, you could just do that, or you could export and import, or you could do various other things. Not the way with passkeys.
Joe's back to wrap up this discussion of passwords next time as we dig more into passkeys, and also Joe gives us some updates on password managers that he might avoid. That's next time on MacVoices. I'll see you then. As always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.